with Sipping Thoughts to bring you a session on fireside chat with finding a purpose, building a unicorn, and hitting refresh with Gazal Kalra, co-founder Rivigo, a tech entrepreneur and an angel investor. This was one of our many sessions in the leadership series, a program that brings thought leaders from different walks of life to talk about their words of wisdom on varied topics. Just briefly about our partners, let me start with Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company co-founded by Sukirti and Meeta Gudgutia. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts, a no-judgment platform where they want to create a network of women for women. And now about Lean in India. Lean in India is the official national chapter of Lean in India. Lean in India aims to contribute towards encouraging more women in leadership positions through peer circles, campaigns, collaborations, and events. Our aim is to increase representation of women in leadership positions by enabling more women in the workforce. With this, I will now turn over to Gazal. Gazal, welcome, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Gazal, it's so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Urvi and Sukirti, and really looking forward to sharing some of my experiences with a broader community. Yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So Gazal, I was very, very intrigued because, when I heard that you were in the trucking sector, because you don't see a lot of women there, we actually don't talk about it. Usually when we're talking about unicorns, we're usually talking about the technology in terms of apps. We're not looking at kind of the the brick and mortar organizations also. So I would love for also you to tell us your story and how and why the trucking industry.
Sure. Frankly, if I could get $1 for every time I was asked, why this sector, and Madam, aap is sector mein kaise, which is the question I would get from a lot of my male counterparts and colleagues in this sector, I would already be a millionaire to say. So basically, it goes back to really, coffee conversation with my co-founder back then. He was an ex-McKinsey colleague, and I was just back from US after my graduate studies. And I had moved back to India with the intent of starting something here, simply because I felt 2-3 things were happening in India. First, India was at a very interesting inflection point where technology and internet and the sort of innovation was just beginning to disrupt very, very large and key sectors. And I think secondly, it's more the kind of scale and impact you can see in people's lives in a country like India is very fulfilling. And I always believe that an entrepreneur's journey is about solving human problems, right? I mean, you can use technology, you can use an app, you can use a better business model, but entrepreneurs inherently are very empathetic people, and they connect with some human pain or human problem. So those were the 2 reasons. And I'd moved back to India, and over a chance sort of coffee meeting, I met Deepak, who at that time was at McKinsey, but planning to leave to start something. So it was his idea of relay trucking and how to solve for such a large sector. And I had no background in trucking. I had never even spoken to a truck driver back then. But when I heard of the idea, it really spoke to me. I think I was mesmerized through the 60-90 minutes of conversation. And it was a large social problem, so it was purposeful. We were going to solve it through tech, so there was an element of innovation, and it was about scale. I mean, logistics is the second largest contributor to GDP. It's sort of the backbone of the Indian economy. So all that really connected with me, and I left that meeting thinking, if at this point in my life, if not now, then when, and if not this, then what, right? So it was really something I felt connected with as a problem statement I wanted to work on for significant time. So that's how I was drawn to it. And then I, of course, spent time meeting a lot of truck drivers, going on road trips myself. And suddenly it was no longer about seeing trucks on the highways, but actually seeing the truck drivers inside the trucks and, what their life is and what we would build. How would it bring a change in their lives and create that sort of ripple effect in their communities around truck drivers, around the taboo around this profession.
No, but tell us, because your story is also equally mesmerizing. Because a lot of people, when you think about the relay model, can you go a little bit further in that? Because I was so fascinated when you explained it, because we typically think about handing the baton, but how you took it to the trucking industry is fabulous.
Sure. I mean, if you look at sort of the data at that time, for every 1,000 trucks in India, there were about 700 truck drivers. So India was, if you would meet industry experts and people in the ecosystem, they would say it's very difficult to get a truck driver, right? And you would assume that maybe, truck driving doesn't pay that much because why else would a country in which you have so much unemployment would, jobs be sitting, empty if it's not paying well? And, but it's actually, the money is quite good because people are compensating you for the poor lifestyle. So it's actually the real reasons why people in the villages didn't want to become truck drivers was first and foremost the poor quality of life. A truck driver's job was miles away from home, whether there is any event at home, anything, they were just disconnected from the families and communities. So in the villages, nobody would get their daughter married off to a truck driver because, they knew that he was never going to be around. 40% of HIV/AIDS cases in India were in the truck driver community. So also the taboo around it. Substance abuse is it's prevalent so much that actually the top two reasons of truck road accidents are actually driver fatigue and driver substance abuse. So this was the moment you become a truck driver in the village, you're just considered. And one of the guys, it was actually a social problem because when we were visiting these villages, somebody said, "Ki driver 37 comment." And, I did not know what it meant. And I came and discussed. I actually got to know that, India has 36 castes. And driver, jab aap ban jate ho, to you're actually considered 37, like the bottom of the social status in the Indian society. And, the children didn't feel proud about the profession. So it started from how do you bring pride back to this profession, right? How do you make it something that, the family or the community feels proud that, somebody in their family is contributing to? Because at the end of the day, this was about nation building. If the country doesn't have a very strong logistics backbone, imagine everything, look at everything around you. It's arrived on a truck from somewhere, right? So, that whole system crumbles because driver shortages mean, rising logistics cost. And we are a few decades away from autonomous driving on the highways in our country. So that really spoke to me that this is not about solving an economic problem. It's solving a human problem, which starts by solving the pride in the profession. The other reasons, of course, were, the risks associated with truck driving that are, people think it's a risky job. On an average, a truck driver lives 10 years less than an average Indian, and that could be attributed to substance abuse, just risky driving on the highways, driving under fatigue conditions, etc. And last is money, yes, because it's not how much money you earn, but how it comes to you. It was coming in cash, in daily wages. And, we have to understand that anything that lands in cash in your pocket just gets used the same day. So while their earning levels were good, the savings weren't there because none of that money was getting back home. It was getting spent on eating, drinking, gambling, substance abuse, etc. So the beauty of the relay model, and why that innovation has been so powerful was when you start to solve this problem by putting the human at the center of the problem, that how do I make the truck driver come back home every day? How do I convert his months away from home job to a day job? You think of breaking the entire, journey into smaller parts. Now, without technology, this coordination can't work because, whoever is bringing the truck from Delhi to Jaipur doesn't know that what time is he arriving, what time do I need to show up. So it could only work because you could build like a technology backbone where a Delhi to Bangalore trip for a truck driver now got broken into Uberized work orders, which 7 drivers along the highway could complete, and they could do it because they had the power of technology or an app that we built for them, and they could see, they are rostered on this truck and they have to show up at their nearest pit stop at this time, which was like 10-15 minutes or 45 minutes away from their home. So that's how it started. And the beauty is that each of our truck, the one metric that we used to track very, very closely, even before revenues and customer satisfaction, was pilot satisfaction. And we call them truck pilots and not truck drivers, because one of the truck drivers had come and said, "Madam, jab aap hame driver bolte hain, hamari izzat usi din khatam ho jati." So I said, nobody has written this somewhere that you need to be called truck driver. So we used to call them truck pilots, relay pilots. And we saw the whole thing around how they perceive their job change. A pilot, like an aeroplane pilot, is a very, very looked up to profession. And we saw that our drivers felt that pride. They suddenly became more caring towards the truck and more respectful. Like the respect began from within. They started loving their profession. Their children started saying कि पापा ड्राइवरी नहीं करते, पापा ड्यूटी पे जाते हैं, सुबह जाते हैं, शाम को आ जाते हैं, right? Their wives were suddenly proud. I remember when we started out, the first 100 truck drivers, I went and visited their families to see the social change that was happening in their homes. And one of the wives of truck drivers actually said that, that there is lesser domestic violence, because when these guys would come back earlier, they would come back from months on the road, irritated, unhappy about their profession. But now they come back every day, and they come back with like fruits and vegetables in their hand because they can have a meal at home. So I've somehow seen all those, and those are very, very sort of overwhelming social impact that we saw. The beauty in the model was this life was changing, but at the same time, the customer's life was changing, because what happened is a Delhi-Bangalore trip would typically take double or 3 times the transit time, because it's the same driver driving. So when he rests, the shipment stops. So imagine Urvi needs like this, this laptop really urgently to be shipped from Bangalore, but it's going to take 5 days and not 2 days, because the truck in which it's arriving, the driver is resting along the highway because he needs to take a rest. Now, either he can drive fatigue, which is risky, or he takes a break, which makes the customer wait longer, right? So what happened with the relay model was that we could cut down the transit time by half, because the truck was never stopping. Every time each driver was driving 5 hours, and then another driver was taking it on. So, we did Delhi, Bombay in like 24 hours, Delhi, Bangalore in under 48 hours. So, and that was a time when e-commerce was really beginning to boom. So we were able to sort of give this power to a lot of e-commerce companies, saying, faster delivery. And that really sort of created a delightful customer experience for people.
No, it's amazing, because you constantly, we've grown up with the relay model, and it's fantastic to see how you've used that. And you've used that concept and said how to simplify things. And once you simplify even such a complex problem, it can be solved. Over to you, Urvi.
Sure. It sounds like a very exciting journey, Gazal, is what I can say, with a purpose and lots of determination. Purpose being getting that pride back for the pilots in the trucking community and solving for a social problem. So from your experience, why is finding that purpose in our lives so important?
So, I had the chance of meeting Oprah when I was at Stanford, and she was there for an event. And then there was a small group lunch to which I won the lottery, because it was by lottery. But during that lunch, she said something very, very profound, which stuck with me. And this was about 7-8 years ago. And it was a defining sort of quote of her life, which she said, which is, find what sparks the light in you, so you in your own way can illuminate the world. And it's stuck with me all these years, because I think that's what purpose means to me. It means really, what gets you going, right? What lights you up? What do you find joy in? And frankly, all of us work is hard, right? We put in a lot of hours, we put in a lot of hard work. We spend time away from our families to give to our work. And if you can find purpose in your work, it becomes effortless, right? So you actually start finding joy in it. And it's different from, having fun at work. So fun is different from joy. There's a Hindi, and I say that that feeling is missing in English language, which is, masti and sukh. So you find purpose helps you get that, sense of fulfillment and joy in whatever you do. So for me, that's why purpose is important. I mean, if you find something that that you sort of feel connected with and can and feel passionate about, then whatever you do, it unlocks the best out of you.
Yep, so true. They say that, when you have a passion for something, you don't even work for one day in your life, and that's exactly what passion and purpose, does to us. So absolutely, glad to hear that. Over to you, Sukirti.
So, Ghazal, I want to ask you this because, of course, the trucking industry is mostly male dominated, but so is the tech and most of these unicorns. Working mostly with men, what were some of the challenges that you faced, or did you face any? Because sometimes we feel that there were challenges, but there are none.
Yeah. No, see, I'd be, I mean, the truth is there are a lot of challenges, right? And it's, once you've made up your mind, it takes more the effort to just stay the course, because everything around you is non-conducive to you sort of opting out of it, right? The fact is, the ecosystem is yet not designed to keep you in the system. It's designed to make it difficult for you to opt out. And, I say if corporate, like the last 20, 30 years has been a lot about rise of women in corporates. And we saw that, early 2000s, where a lot of large corporates in India had started to have some green shoots of diversity in the boardrooms, but it was still lonely. And, entrepreneurship is even lonelier for women, right? It's, I don't know what it is. It's a lot of biases, right? And when I started out, I saw my share of it, sometimes not directly for me, but for people around, right? From, can you be an entrepreneur? Do you have that sort of aggression? Can you build things out? And I'm not talking about just logistics. I mean, logistics is like the far extreme of what industry people would be comfortable seeing women entrepreneurs. I mean, if it's anything fashion, if it's anything retail, there's still more acceptance. So I did get a lot of those questions when I started out, where, like I said, my first few customer meetings were, Madam, aap is sector mein kaise? And I could have at that point either chosen to, opt out with that self-doubt. But, one thing I realized is that women are also the quickest to judge themselves. So a lot of what we project in our conversations is something that we are feeling ourselves, and maybe not necessarily the person. So in those moments, and I was 27, 28 when I started that, right? So I was like, maybe what I'm perceiving is not what his intent of asking is. So let me use this opportunity to talk about why I actually, why am I actually doing it? So, whether there was some warehouse manager, because I used to just on my own go to warehouses, go to like, logistics offices, and these are like really, you would not even find like a women's washroom there, right? And I would just have conversation with like mid managers there, and why I'm doing this. And at the end of the conversation, I felt I had, a believer, right, who believed in me and my dedication and what we were doing at Rivigo. And some of our your earliest customers are actually not your customers; they're your believers. So, you convert that into an opportunity, and that's how I thought. So I used to really enjoy talking about all of this, and people would at the end of the day say, "Ma'am, aap to bahut padhi likhe ho is sector ke liye," because I had just come back from the US, and somebody would ask that, can you sort of help my son sort of apply for a US degree, like write his application. So interesting conversations, but you make you try and convert each hurdle into an opportunity.
I definitely say पढ़े लिखो तो definitely हो, but mature भी काफी थे. Because at 27, I don't think I would have been that mature. Over to you, Urvi.
No, it's actually interestingly you say that. And again, some of these are, just things you pick up, and I can only connect the dots now sitting here. It was one of the, conversations again at Stanford where somebody said that, all that you study here can actually become an armor and weigh you down. So, be prepared when you go out to just keep your, armor of your education aside and just, be open to, learning again and also to criticism.
Well, that's very, very good and very reassuring to also remind all of us. Over to you, Urvi.
Sure, sure. So we understand that Rivigo became a unicorn in 2019, and we wanted to understand in creating Rivigo, what were some of the key steps that you followed to ensure that it gets scaled up, and it gets scaled up so fast, in record time, really.
Yeah. So I think once you have the right product market fit, that helps you get scaled very, very fast. Like you start seeing more customers, you start seeing customers who want more from you. And this, you as an entrepreneur get that instinct that there is a product market fit here. We've got a solution that's working. And then comes the real challenge of how do you now scale this up to something that can sustainably deliver this product to the customer, right? Because where people struggle is they get the initial customers, they love the product, but what happens thereon? How do you keep scaling your sales, your orders? How do you scale up your organization? How do you set a culture? How do you ensure your customer promise improves and doesn't reduce as you scale up? Because a lot of organizations in their crazy scale up phase actually compromise on one or more of these. And I think that's where just being from McKinsey and having seen some of this in reverse sort of gave us the view, the sort of insight that this is what it would take from here on to build this out, right? I mean, we had done the 0 to 1, but it was now the 1 to 10x. And 1 to 10x for me is like, building the foundation of any organization. And there are pillars to it depending on what business you're building. And I always say that, this is like, this is more of nurturing, and this is, more of parenting, because, you have to build it the right way. You cannot take shortcuts, right? Because if this foundation, the pillars are not strong, then when you hit the 10 to 100x, this cannot fall apart, right? So if it means it'll take time for you to build the right culture and get the right people, you cannot take shortcuts in this. If it means that you have to fix your product, if there are certain customer feedbacks that are sort of beginning to bubble up, then you fix it, right? You don't sort of overlook it. So a lot of the foundation really happens here. And what the amazing thing is that it's a lot of work to be done on inputs. So the organization and the entrepreneur's mindset here needs to be more input focused rather than output focused. So you may not see outputs moving or needle moving because there's work happening here, but nobody sees this. But if this is done well, then you would see the outcomes just shoot up. So it's that lens and that perspective that entrepreneurs should apply.
Sure. It's your baby at the end of the day, and you have to sort of, groom it in a way that you raise it right. So absolutely. Over to you, Sakirti.
So everybody, I know you probably get this question also. Everybody wants to be a unicorn, and unicorn has become like the new buzzword. I think now they're going to have to come up with a new one because there are too many unicorns now. So I think we have to come up with trinicorn or something like that. But what are the challenges of being a big startup? Because that's also a lot of pressure once you get into this kind of a club.
Yeah. I think just on unicorn, given the time that we are in, an entrepreneur is never defined by the ability to raise capital, but it's really the ability to deploy capital judiciously, right? And we've seen a fantastic example just last week with Nykaa listing,
amazing.
Which is like, it's a historic moment for Indian startup ecosystem, right? And the way, like, it has a lot of firsts. And one of the firsts is just the very little amount of capital that was raised to create this kind of an outcome in a very profitable company, right? So it's a great example in this sector, and that's what I mean. Whatever little capital they raised, they were able to deploy it judiciously, and that's why I say capital raising gets you valuations, but deploying that capital well gets you value. And what entrepreneurs should be chasing is real value and not valuations. And it's therefore the first challenge that becomes for any entrepreneur in this journey is just humility through this, because valuations are not your metric of success. It's the value that you're creating for your customers, for your employees, for your shareholders. And therefore being very true to that. And sometimes our sort of people can get misled in that journey. So it's a lot of the entrepreneur becoming that person who can make these trade-offs between value and valuations.
Oh, well said, because I think that word has just become everywhere you just see it. So I wanted to get your take on it. Over to you, Urvi.
Yeah. So, you are one of the handful of women that are unicorn founders today. And we also understand that we have very few women in this space. Why do you think that's the case?
I think it's just been lack of role models. And, think about it, right? A few years ago, somebody in my HR team came up to me and said that we need to have like a diversity policy. And I've been thinking of all the things we can do. And, we should circulate it. And, I've looked at 5 companies and we should have like these committees and that committees and diversity, etc. And we should have these posters here, etc. And I said, this is not going to get more women to work. More women will come to work if you and I stay committed to this, right? A mid-manager in a company will never leave the company if they see more women in the board, if they see more women CXOs in their organization. That is assuring for them that, yes, if you stay, you can get there, right? That is it. They get the mentorship, they get the role modeling, they get the, they get the comfort and the confidence. And no amount of things you put on the wall or send policies will move the needle. It's only when somebody gets there, they can only pay it forward, right? So that's what our ecosystem misses. So I can only say that, is it easy for me today? No. But is it easier than somebody who started 10 years ago? Yes. Is it going to be easier for someone who starts 10 years later? Hopefully.
Sure. We need more of role models like you, Sukirti, to sort of, take the lead and sort of be the leaders of today and tomorrow.
Yeah. And also on that, I think, given that the data is so abysmal, right? Like 5 out of 136 unicorns, that it's, if you look at the data, you'll be a pessimist and you'll be like, this is not for me. But I think it's the stories, right? And the stories need to be celebrated, not just the stories of the few, the stories of the more, because we need to bring out stories from the grassroots, right? And I always find those inspiring and also more relatable, right? I mean, just seeing people in your community and around you, and those grassroots stories can inspire sometimes much broader set of people, and which increases the funnel, right? Because the more that opt into this, the more the chances that you see more and more then successful role models, right? So it's
But often a lot of women get worried because entrepreneurship having a life, and can both of them coexist? Because as you've also said, that entrepreneurship really stretches you, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. So is that also one of the reasons, because we feel that we're going to be too taxed with too many things?
Yeah. No, entrepreneurship takes real strength, but I have also never met a woman who's not strong. So if anybody is well equipped to, if God designed somebody to hit it out of the park in entrepreneurship, it's women, because, we're just designed to take on more and stay committed. And most importantly, we're very empathetic. And entrepreneurship at the very core is just solving about human problems and human pain.
No, that's very good, because it's reassuring to hear, because I think a lot of us look at the problem and we understand the problem, but then when we think about the commitment, the time, and we'll think that, am I going to be able to manage all my responsibilities of being a wife, a mother, an entrepreneur? And sometimes that is really where we get a lot of self-doubt. Over to you,
But
Urvi.
it's exactly, that's what the self, like we stand in front of the mirror and we start having self-doubts, and I often feel it's all in our own mind. And it's just change the conversation, just change the self-talk.
I can do it. I can do it. Yeah.
You can do it. Like, somebody's done this, what's so difficult about it? I mean,
Yes.
and if the moment you start believing, the moment you say, I can do this, and I'm designed to do this, and I'm empowered to do this, you will just see that you stop projecting that lack of confidence onto others as well.
No, and I also love the fact of what you also said earlier, when you can take a big and complex problem and break it down into chunks. You can also do that when you're thinking about actually starting a new venture, how to manage, break it into chunks, and possibly you will be able to manage it all also.
Yeah, it's always best to split the elephant into pieces, and then sort of start working on it. So, you're currently looking at what's next. What is that juncture when you say, okay, it's time to look for my next big thing or my next thing? How does one evaluate a business potential or a business opportunity? Is there a process or is there a lens that you use to say, okay, this is a good idea and this is not so good?
Yeah, I think the decision to when we evaluate that it's time to sort of hit refresh is also, again, seeing what you're good at and what you're doing, is it giving you joy, right? And I've always held that metric, right? As organizations scale, there is a lot of routine and stability that comes into play, which okay, let me put it this way, that an organization, you should always look at an organization and say, who are the best equipped to run it, right? And it's almost like saying that a startup is like a stage and everybody comes in and plays their part, right? So entrepreneurship is also about being egoless and saying that the organization currently needs or is better run by somebody who enjoys this kind of work, right? Which is running a more stable, very sort of metric driven organization and lesser innovation, right? I was at that phase in my life where I wanted to sort of innovate and build, because that gave me more joy. And these decisions are tough, but like I said, I mean, if you don't try it, you wouldn't know, what's ahead of you. So that's what led me to take that step. And you don't see that much in India yet, but because I'd spent so much time in the Valley, there are examples where founders create space for more sort of seasoned operators to come in and then run the organizations. We've seen that in some of the bigger examples, but it is a very prevalent trend there. And that's the maturity of the ecosystem that happens, in its due course. So that was one. Now, how do you select or decide what you want to do? Again, it's finding what's your North Star, right? So for me, it's always been about purpose. It's always been about innovation. It's always been about scale. And with Rivigo, I really enjoyed the journey because of, it took all these three and how. So I'm looking for something similar. And through the ideation process, really, these are my three filters of, how I decide. Now, the process needs to be designed on knowing yourself better. We all have biases. For example, if I'm a very intuitive person, which a lot of entrepreneurs are, every problem is worth solving, because we'll just like rush into it. We'll be like, oh my God, like I should be solving this, right? But then you know your biases and you put a process to it, right? So, whether these are these frameworks or you sort of have like somebody to ideate with. So you're sort of, have an independent person around, whether that's in your friends community, who you're ideating, who keeps a check, right? That you maybe are getting too over enthusiastic about this idea. So everybody needs to find their own process. I cannot say there's a cookie cutter approach, but a lot of entrepreneurship is also about being very aware of your own abilities, and also what are your own biases.
Sure, can't agree more.
So we talked about this a little bit earlier that, of course, we need to see more women in top positions. Same thing happens with leadership. But is there anything that we can do other than that to see more women reach the top?
We as women, or we as
women, we as society, we as an industry, we as an ecosystem?
I have thought about it, right? And yes, you can create a wish list for what the ecosystem can do, and there will never be enough that can be done, right? From like providing like good quality sort of childcare to the society being less sort of stereotyping women or being less judgmental. But I think it's not going to change overnight. Like, it's a transition. So if there are two things that somebody else needs to do to see more women, is I think make just our country safer for women, because
Yes.
The fact in this country is that a lot of women in the villages have to drop out of, a lot of girls in the villages have to drop out after primary school because their parents find it unsafe to send them to a middle or a higher secondary school in a nearby village. And that happens when women graduate with higher education but can't take up a job because it's not safe. India has the highest number of educated women sitting at home. Now, does that create a business opportunity? Yes, if someone can unlock these women sitting at home and get them jobs, it's, I can say it's the next $1 billion idea, right? But until then, if you have women who have restricted mobility, that means their opportunities are restricted. So at an ecosystem level or at a national level, or if there was a request I could say to our honorable Prime Minister, it would be just make the country safer.
I think we all hear you there. Because I mean, even given all the advantages we have, we also feel unsafe, coming home late at night, being alone. So even with that, I think there is definitely that feeling that most of us have, especially if you have children. You'll wait up until they're in the house because you're not sure what will be happening out there.
Yeah. So they say, give a woman $1, she will put it to good use. Teach her how money works, and she will go and change the world. You wrote a beautiful piece on LinkedIn on how women can achieve financial freedom. Please tell us why is this so important?
I think it's financial freedom is important so that women become decision makers, right? And I truly believe that when women make decisions keeping both the heart and the mind at the center, right? And we need that kind of decision making in organizations, in governments, in homes. We've all grown up seeing how our mothers run our homes, right? But they've also not, experienced financial freedom with this, whether in the house or outside. So to me, financial freedom is actually a path to broader empowerment, and that's why, whether that is at home or in workplaces, I've also seen that working women actually like come back and expect their father or their husband or their brother to make the investment decisions on their behalf. So you see the conundrum, which is that you've actually, somebody is, earning, and you would think they're empowered, but they're actually just, still not empowered because they're not making that decision, right, for themselves. And COVID, unfortunately, like saw a lot of these tragedies happen where, women were, very vulnerable to this risk of, finding grounds in their life and for their children where they had like the financial decision maker in the family, sort of not being there anymore. So it was even more painful to watch because not only were they grieving with the loss, they were also just lost because they didn't know how to get themselves back up. So that really moved me to write this year. The other reason why financial freedom is important is, again, role modeling. When women step out and work, and when women take decisions at home, it's not only role modeling for girls, but also role modeling for the boys in your house that, hey, this is what equality means, right? So you also bring up, better sort of men for the society.
What a beautiful way to end, because I think that question of equality, that is the quest that we're after. Any last words as we conclude for today?
No, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I would just end with a lot of what we want to do and achieve has to come from within, right? And we all have to search for that power within us, and that's why there is enough inspiration already in our mythology, which is around the you know the goddess that we have, whether that's Durga or Lakshmi, and we are the country that has I think the maximum number of women deities being worshipped. So it is a lot about just feeling that power within, because frankly, if you expect somebody's going to come and give it to you, not going to happen yet, right? And we hope for it, but a lot of it has to come from within. And every time you catch yourself doubting yourself, just know that there is absolutely nothing in this world that you cannot achieve. I mean, you're made to achieve things.
Well, thank you on behalf of Lean in India and Sipping Thoughts. That was awesome, Ghazal. Great to hear your perspective, and we love your story.
Thank you.